You sure you can still handle a rifle, old man?" The young Marines laughed as 74-year-old Frank Wilson's hands trembled while he examined their sniper rifle. His Parkinson's disease made even simple movements difficult, and the idea of him shooting seemed almost cruel. But when the impossible training scenario began, targets popping up at distances that challenged even elite marksmen, something extraordinary happened. Frank's trembling stopped. His breathing became controlled. His eyes found a focus that seemed to transcend his physical limitations. One shot, two shots, three perfect hits on targets the young Marines couldn't even see clearly. Because sometimes legends don't retire, they just wait for the moment when they're needed most. Silence swallowed the range. Rifles lowered. The young Marine stared, mouths half open, as the old sniper rolled to his side and let the shake return to his hands like a curtain falling after the show. Because legends don't disappear when the body rebels. They lie in wait, ready to steal back time for the few moments that matter most. Welcome to Silent Salute, where we discover that true skill runs deeper than physical limitations. Before we continue this incredible story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe that the warrior spirit can overcome any challenge, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. We're honored to share these remarkable stories with you. The Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in Bridgeport, California, was conducting its most challenging sniper training exercise of the year. The scenario was designed to push elite marksmen beyond their comfort zones, testing their ability to engage targets under conditions that replicated the most demanding combat environments they might encounter in real operations. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison was leading a team of 6 Marine snipers through the advanced training course, each one handpicked from units throughout the Corps for their exceptional marksmanship abilities. These weren't ordinary Marines learning basic shooting skills. These were proven combat veterans whose precision shooting had already been tested in Iraq and Afghanistan. Morrison himself was considered one of the finest marksmen in the Marine Corps, with confirmed kills from distances exceeding 1,200 meters and a reputation for maintaining accuracy under the most stressful combat conditions. His selection to lead this elite training group reflected the Corps' confidence in his abilities and his potential for developing other exceptional marksmen. The training exercise they were attempting had never been successfully completed by any previous class. It required engaging multiple targets at extreme ranges while accounting for challenging environmental conditions including high altitude, variable winds, and limited visibility that made target identification extremely difficult. Among the civilians supporting the training operation was an elderly man named Frank Wilson, who worked as a part-time groundskeeper and equipment manager for the facility. At 74 years old, Frank moved slowly and with obvious difficulty, his hands showing the tremor characteristic of Parkinson's disease that had been progressively worsening over the past 8 years. To the young Marines participating in the training, Frank was practically invisible, just another civilian contractor who maintained the facility while real warriors focused on developing their lethal skills. His trembling hands and shuffling gait suggested someone whose best days were far behind him, hardly worthy of attention from elite military marksmen. What they didn't know was that Frank's full name was Franklin "Ghost" Wilson, and before his medical retirement in 1985, he had been the most decorated sniper in Marine Corps history. His service record included 178 confirmed kills across 5 combat deployments, and his innovations in long-range precision shooting had established records that stood for over 2 decades. Frank had been inducted into the Marine Corps Sniper Hall of Fame in 1987, recognition reserved for fewer than 30 Marines whose marksmanship achievements had fundamentally shaped the development of precision shooting throughout the military. His techniques were still taught in sniper schools, though few instructors knew the identity of their original developer. But Parkinson's disease had gradually stripped away the physical capabilities that had made Frank legendary. The hands that had once been steady enough to make impossible shots now trembled constantly. The fine motor control that had enabled precision beyond imagination was now compromised by progressive neurological deterioration. Frank had taken the groundskeeper position to remain connected to the military community he understood and respected, while avoiding the recognition that his legendary status might generate. He preferred to work quietly in the background, maintaining the facilities where new generations of Marines learned skills he had once mastered. The training exercise that Morrison's team was attempting involved engaging targets at distances up to 1,800 meters under conditions designed to replicate the most challenging scenarios they might face in combat. Success required not just exceptional marksmanship, but the mental toughness to maintain accuracy when physical and environmental factors made precision shooting nearly impossible. Morrison had been preparing his team for weeks, emphasizing the technical and mental aspects of extreme-range shooting that separated good marksmen from legendary ones. He'd studied historical accounts of impossible shots made by Marines in previous conflicts, using them as inspiration for what might be achievable with proper training and dedication. Gentlemen, Morrison addressed his team as they prepared for the day's shooting. Today's exercise will test everything you've learned about precision marksmanship. The targets you'll engage are at the absolute limit of what's possible with our equipment and ammunition. Morrison continued his briefing, outlining the specific challenges they would face. Wind conditions are variable and unpredictable. Temperature and humidity are affecting bullet trajectory in ways that our ballistic computers can't perfectly calculate. Target identification will require vision and judgment that goes beyond what you've experienced in previous training. The Marines listened intently, understanding that they were about to attempt something that would test their capabilities in ways that could define their development as precision marksmen. Corporal Davis, the youngest member of the team, asked the question that was troubling several of the Marines. Staff Sergeant, has anyone ever successfully completed this particular exercise? Morrison's answer increased the pressure they were all feeling. No, Corporal. This exercise has been attempted by 12 previous classes, including some of the finest marksmen in Marine Corps history. No one has achieved the accuracy standards required for successful completion. Lance Corporal Rodriguez, who had the best shooting scores in the current class, expressed confidence that bordered on arrogance. Staff Sergeant, we've all proven ourselves in combat. We should be able to handle whatever challenges this exercise presents. Morrison appreciated Rodriguez's confidence, but wanted to ensure his team understood the magnitude of what they were attempting. Rodriguez, the Marines who failed this exercise include Medal of Honor recipients and Marines whose combat achievements exceed anything any of us have accomplished. Don't underestimate what you're facing today. As the Marines continued their preparation, Frank was working nearby, adjusting target mechanisms and ensuring that the shooting range equipment functioned properly. His movements were slow and careful, necessitated by his medical condition, but his attention to detail was meticulous. Frank had been observing the Marines' preparation with professional interest, noting their techniques and listening to their discussions about the challenges they would face. His experience told him that their approach was technically sound, but lacked the mental preparation necessary for extreme-range shooting under adverse conditions. When Rodriguez noticed Frank working near their equipment, he made a comment that revealed his lack of understanding about who was maintaining their training facility. "Look at the old guy's hands shaking," Rodriguez said to Davis, loud enough for Frank to hear. "Can you imagine trying to shoot with hands like that? Good thing he's just moving targets instead of trying to hit them." Davis laughed at Rodriguez's observation, adding his own commentary about Frank's apparent limitations. "Probably couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with those tremors. Makes you appreciate having steady hands for precision shooting." Frank heard their comments, but showed no reaction, continuing his work with the dignity of someone who'd learned not to be bothered by assumptions based on his current physical condition rather than his historical capabilities. Morrison was focused on his team's preparation and didn't intervene in their casual mockery of Frank, assuming it was harmless banter rather than disrespectful commentary about someone whose background they didn't understand. But Frank's presence during their training exercise would soon provide an education about assumptions, respect, and the difference between current physical limitations and lifetime capabilities that transcended temporary challenges. The training exercise began with Morrison's team attempting to engage targets at progressively increasing distances, starting at 800 meters and advancing to the maximum range of 1,800 meters. The early stages went reasonably well, with most Marines achieving acceptable accuracy at distances where their training and experience provided adequate preparation. But as the ranges increased and environmental factors became more challenging, the team's performance began to deteriorate rapidly. Wind patterns that changed unpredictably between shots, atmospheric conditions that affected bullet trajectory in complex ways, and target visibility that required exceptional visual acuity combined to create shooting challenges that exceeded their capabilities. Rodriguez, who had been most confident about the team's chances for success, was struggling with targets beyond 1,200 meters. His shots were missing by significant margins, and his frustration was becoming obvious to his teammates and instructors. "I can't read these wind conditions," Rodriguez admitted after missing his fourth consecutive shot at a 1,400-meter target. "The ballistic computer isn't accounting for something that's affecting bullet trajectory." Davis was having similar difficulties, his shots grouping inconsistently in ways that suggested fundamental problems with his shooting technique under these specific conditions. "Staff Sergeant," Davis said after another missed shot, "I think there are environmental factors affecting our shooting that we weren't trained to handle." Morrison was becoming concerned that his elite team of marksmen was going to join the 12 previous classes that had failed to complete the exercise successfully. Their technical skills were sound, but something about the specific conditions was defeating even their exceptional capabilities. "Gentlemen, take a break and reassess your approach," Morrison instructed. "We're missing something fundamental about these shooting conditions." During the break, Frank approached Morrison with obvious reluctance, understanding that offering advice would reveal knowledge about precision shooting that might lead to uncomfortable questions about his background. "Staff Sergeant," Frank said quietly, "your Marines are technically proficient, but they're fighting the environmental conditions instead of adapting to them." Morrison was surprised to receive shooting advice from the elderly groundskeeper, but Frank's observation suggested understanding that went beyond casual observation. "What do you mean by adapting to conditions?" Morrison asked. Frank's answer revealed knowledge that seemed inconsistent with his apparent role as facility maintenance personnel. "The wind patterns at these ranges aren't random. They're following terrain features that create predictable effects on bullet trajectory. Your Marines are trying to calculate compensation rather than reading the environmental signs that would tell them what adjustments to make." Morrison was intrigued by Frank's technical knowledge, but skeptical about advice from someone whose trembling hands suggested he couldn't demonstrate the techniques he was describing. "Sir, are you saying you understand long-range shooting well enough to advise Marine snipers?" Frank's hesitation revealed his internal struggle between wanting to help the Marines succeed and his desire to avoid revealing his military background. "I've observed a lot of shooting over the years," Frank said carefully. "Sometimes experience provides perspective that technical training doesn't include." Rodriguez, who had been listening to the conversation, made a comment that would trigger Frank's decision to demonstrate rather than just advise. "No offense, old-timer, but I don't think someone who can't hold his hands steady has much to teach Marine snipers about precision shooting." Frank looked at Rodriguez with the patient expression of someone who'd encountered similar assumptions many times before. "Son, would you like me to show you what I mean about reading environmental conditions?" Rodriguez's laugh was dismissive. "Sure, old man. Let's see what you can do with those shaky hands." Morrison realized that the situation was escalating beyond casual conversation, and that Frank was apparently willing to demonstrate shooting techniques despite his obvious physical limitations. "Sir, are you saying you want to attempt the shooting exercise?" Frank's answer surprised everyone within hearing distance. "Staff Sergeant, if your Marines are willing to listen to instruction based on what I can show them, I'll demonstrate the techniques that make this exercise possible to complete." Morrison was curious enough about Frank's confidence to allow the demonstration, understanding that the worst outcome would be confirming Rodriguez's assumption that Frank's physical condition prevented effective shooting. "Sir, you're welcome to attempt the exercise, but I want you to understand that this is challenging shooting that has defeated some very capable marksmen." Frank nodded understanding. "Staff Sergeant, I'm aware of the difficulty, but sometimes different approaches to familiar problems produce better results." Morrison positioned Frank at the firing line and explained the targets he would be engaging, starting with the 1,400-meter shots that had been defeating his Marines. Frank examined the rifle carefully, his trembling hands making the inspection process slow and awkward. The Marines watching expected his physical limitations to make shooting impossible, confirming their assumptions about his capabilities. But when Frank settled into shooting position and began his environmental assessment, something remarkable happened. His tremors seemed to diminish as he focused on reading wind patterns, atmospheric conditions, and target characteristics with intensity that suggested extensive experience with precision shooting. The wind is shifting in a consistent pattern based on the terrain features, Frank explained as he prepared for his first shot. Instead of fighting the conditions, I'm going to time my shots to coincide with the most favorable moments in the wind cycle. Frank's first shot at 1,400 meters was a center hit that seemed impossible given his visible physical limitations and the conditions that had been defeating experienced Marine marksmen. Lucky shot, Rodriguez muttered, unwilling to believe that Frank's success was based on skill rather than chance. Frank's second shot, also a perfect hit, made it clear that luck wasn't responsible for his accuracy. His third shot, delivered with the same casual confidence despite his trembling hands, completed a group that demonstrated precision shooting at a level that exceeded anything the Marines had achieved. How is that possible? Davis asked Morrison, staring at Frank's target in amazement. Morrison was equally puzzled, but Frank's explanation would provide education about the relationship between physical capability and acquired expertise that none of them had considered. Precision shooting isn't just about steady hands, Frank explained as he prepared to engage targets at even longer ranges. It's about understanding environmental conditions, timing your shots properly, and applying techniques that compensate for physical limitations. Frank continued shooting at progressively longer ranges, maintaining accuracy that seemed to defy both his physical condition and the challenging conditions that had defeated Morrison's team. At 1,600 meters, Frank's shots continued hitting center mass despite wind conditions that were making target acquisition difficult even with spotting scopes. At 1,800 meters, the maximum range of the exercise, Frank achieved hits that Morrison had never seen anyone accomplish under these specific conditions. "Sir," Morrison said after confirming Frank's perfect performance at maximum range, "your shooting ability exceeds anything I've witnessed in 15 years of Marine Corps service. Where did you develop this level of expertise?" Frank's answer would reveal the military background that his groundskeeper position had concealed for decades. Frank realized that his shooting demonstration had made it impossible to maintain the anonymity he'd carefully preserved for years. Morrison and his team deserved an explanation for capabilities that clearly exceeded what a civilian groundskeeper should possess. "Staff Sergeant Morrison," Frank said as he set down the rifle, "I think I owe you and your Marines an explanation for what you've just witnessed." Morrison was prepared for Frank to reveal some kind of military background, but he wasn't prepared for the magnitude of what Frank was about to disclose. "My name is Franklin Wilson, Gunnery Sergeant Franklin Wilson, United States Marine Corps, retired. And before I became a groundskeeper, I was a Marine sniper." Morrison felt his understanding of the situation shift dramatically, but Frank's revelation was just beginning. "I served 5 combat deployments between 1968 and 1983, primarily in Vietnam and classified operations that I can't discuss in detail." Morrison was processing the implications of learning that the elderly groundskeeper he'd been working with was a Vietnam-era Marine with extensive combat experience. "During my service, I achieved 178 confirmed kills and developed long-range shooting techniques that became standard components of Marine sniper training." Rodriguez was staring at Frank in disbelief, understanding that he'd been mocking someone whose marksmanship achievements exceeded anything he could hope to accomplish. "In 1987, I was inducted into the Marine Corps Sniper Hall of Fame, recognition reserved for Marines whose shooting achievements have shaped military capabilities." Morrison realized that he was talking to one of the most legendary marksmen in Marine Corps history, someone whose exploits had been studied, but whose identity had remained unknown to most current Marines. "Sir, are you saying that the techniques we've been learning in sniper school were developed by you?" Frank nodded. "Many of the environmental reading methods, wind compensation techniques, and extreme-range shooting principles that are now standard instruction were developed during my combat service." Frank continued explaining his background and its relevance to the training exercise they'd been attempting. "The specific challenges of this exercise, variable wind conditions, extreme ranges, atmospheric effects on trajectory, are problems I encountered repeatedly during combat operations. The solutions I developed then are what enabled me to complete the exercise today." Morrison was beginning to understand that Frank's success wasn't despite his physical limitations, but because of knowledge and experience that transcended current physical capabilities. Sir, how do you maintain shooting accuracy despite the tremor from Parkinson's disease? Frank's answer provided insight into adaptation techniques that could benefit anyone facing physical challenges. Parkinson's affects fine motor control, but it doesn't eliminate muscle memory that's been developed over decades of practice. The key is adapting shooting techniques to work with current physical capabilities rather than fighting against them. Frank explained specific modifications to his shooting technique that compensated for his tremor while maintaining precision. I time my shots to coincide with natural pauses in the tremor cycle, use breathing techniques that provide stability despite motor control issues, and apply environmental reading skills that reduce dependence on perfect physical steadiness. Morrison was taking detailed notes, recognizing that Frank's adapted techniques could benefit not just Marines with physical limitations, but anyone seeking to improve their precision shooting under challenging conditions. Sir, these adaptation techniques suggest that physical challenges don't have to end shooting careers if proper modifications are made to standard methods. Frank agreed. Military training tends to assume that physical capabilities remain constant, but real-world shooting often requires adaptation to changing conditions, including physical limitations. Rodriguez, who had been listening in embarrassed silence, finally found the courage to address his earlier disrespectful comments. Sir, I need to apologize for my comments about your physical condition. I had no idea about your background or capabilities. Frank's response reflected the grace and understanding that characterized his approach to difficult situations. Rodriguez, your assumptions were based on what you observed. You couldn't have known about my military background or the techniques I've developed for managing physical limitations. But Frank wanted to use Rodriguez's mistake as an educational opportunity that could benefit all the Marines present. The more important lesson is that physical appearance and current limitations don't necessarily indicate historical capabilities or potential contributions to mission success. Frank continued his instruction, using the situation to teach broader lessons about leadership, respect, and the importance of recognizing value in unexpected places. In combat, you'll encounter local nationals, allied forces, and even enemy personnel whose appearance or obvious limitations might lead you to underestimate their capabilities. Those assumptions can be dangerous and counterproductive. Morrison was impressed by Frank's ability to transform an awkward situation into valuable military education. Sir, would you be willing to share these lessons with other Marine units? Your perspective on adaptation and assumption management could benefit Marines throughout the Corps. Frank's answer reflected his ongoing commitment to Marine Corps training and development despite his retirement and physical challenges. Staff Sergeant, if my experience can help current Marines be more effective and avoid mistakes based on assumptions, I'm willing to contribute whatever I can. Morrison realized that Frank's presence at the training facility represented an unprecedented opportunity for enhanced military education that went beyond basic marksmanship instruction. Sir, your techniques for shooting with physical limitations, combined with your environmental reading expertise, could revolutionize how we approach adaptive training for Marines facing various challenges. Frank agreed to expand his role from groundskeeper to specialized instructor, understanding that his unique combination of legendary expertise and adaptive techniques could benefit Marines in ways that conventional instruction couldn't provide. But Frank had more to reveal about his current situation that would further demonstrate his ongoing contributions to military communities despite his personal challenges. Staff Sergeant, there's something else you should know about why I've been working at this facility despite my medical condition. Morrison was curious about additional factors that might have influenced Frank's career choices and current activities. Sir, what brought you to this specific assignment? Frank's answer revealed the depth of his ongoing commitment to Marine Corps training and capability development. I've been conducting informal assessments of current sniper training methods, comparing them to techniques that were effective during my combat service and identifying areas where improvements might be possible. Morrison realized that Frank's groundskeeper position had provided cover for ongoing evaluation and potential enhancement of Marine Corps training capabilities. The exercise you attempted today was designed based on my recommendations for testing sniper capabilities under conditions that replicate actual combat challenges rather than ideal range conditions. Morrison understood that Frank's influence on Marine Corps training extended far beyond his historical achievements to include ongoing contributions to current training development. Sir, are you saying that your work here has been aimed at improving Marine sniper training based on your combat experience? Frank confirmed Morrison's assessment. My medical retirement didn't end my commitment to Marine Corps effectiveness. Working here allows me to contribute to training improvements while remaining connected to the community I understand and respect. Frank's revelation transformed his relationship with the Mountain Warfare Training Center from anonymous groundskeeper to acknowledged expert, whose ongoing contributions enhanced Marine Corps capabilities in ways that extended far beyond his historical achievements. Morrison immediately recommended Frank for formal recognition as a specialized instructor, understanding that his unique combination of legendary expertise and adaptive techniques could benefit Marine training throughout the Corps. The training exercise that had defeated 12 previous classes became a standard component of advanced sniper training, with Frank's techniques incorporated into instruction that prepared Marines for the most challenging shooting scenarios they might encounter in combat. Rodriguez's embarrassing assumptions about Frank's capabilities became a learning experience that transformed his understanding of respect, capability assessment, and the importance of recognizing value regardless of physical appearance or obvious limitations. Frank's adaptive shooting techniques were documented and incorporated into training programs for Marines dealing with injuries, medical conditions, or age-related changes that affected their physical capabilities but didn't eliminate their potential contributions to military effectiveness. The Mountain Warfare Training Center became a model for utilizing veteran expertise in ways that honored their service while enhancing current military capabilities, with Frank's example influencing similar programs throughout the military. Morrison's professional development was significantly enhanced by his association with Frank, leading to advanced assignments in training development and veteran integration that utilized the knowledge and perspective he'd gained from their collaboration. Frank's work with adaptive shooting techniques influenced military medical programs that helped wounded warriors maintain their military effectiveness despite physical challenges that might have previously ended their careers. The Marines who witnessed Frank's shooting demonstration became advocates for adaptive training methods and veteran expertise utilization, carrying those lessons throughout their military careers and into leadership positions. Frank's story became part of Marine Corps education about the importance of recognizing and honoring service regardless of current physical capabilities and the value of utilizing veteran knowledge for current training enhancement. His techniques for managing Parkinson's disease while maintaining shooting accuracy provided inspiration and practical guidance for other veterans dealing with similar medical challenges. The shooting range where Frank had demonstrated impossible accuracy despite trembling hands became a symbol of how determination and expertise could overcome physical limitations when proper adaptive techniques were applied. Frank's influence on Marine Corps training extended beyond marksmanship to include broader lessons about leadership, adaptation, and the importance of continuous learning from those whose experience exceeded conventional expectations. His collaboration with Morrison and other Marine instructors led to enhanced training programs that prepared Marines for the unpredictable challenges they would face in combat operations where standard techniques might prove inadequate. The groundskeeper who had been mocked for his shaky hands proved to be one of the most valuable training resources in Marine Corps history, whose ongoing contributions enhanced military effectiveness for years after his initial recognition. Frank's example influenced military policies about veteran utilization and adaptive training, leading to programs that recognized the continuing value of military experience regardless of physical changes or medical challenges. His work with the training center demonstrated that retirement from active duty didn't mean retirement from service to military communities, and that the most valuable contributions often came from unexpected sources. The lesson of Frank's shooting demonstration was incorporated into military education about assumptions, respect, and the importance of recognizing capability in forms that might not match conventional expectations. Years later, when Frank's Parkinson's disease progressed to the point where he could no longer make public shooting demonstrations, the Marine Corps established programs that preserved his techniques and continued his work of developing adaptive training methods. Morrison's career was significantly enhanced by his association with Frank, leading to senior positions in training development, where he continued applying the lessons learned from their collaboration. Frank's legacy lived on in the enhanced capabilities of Marines who had been trained using his adaptive techniques, the improved training programs that incorporated his expertise, and the broader understanding that military value extended beyond physical perfection to include knowledge, experience, and the wisdom that came from overcoming challenges. The man whose trembling hands had been mocked by young Marines proved that true marksmanship was about more than physical steadiness. It was about understanding, adaptation, and the mental discipline to perform when conditions were far from perfect. Frank's story became a reminder that legends didn't always announce themselves, and that the most valuable teachers were often those who had learned to overcome the greatest challenges while maintaining their commitment to serving others. His example demonstrated that physical limitations didn't have to define capability or limit contribution, and that the most effective warriors were often those who had learned to adapt their skills to work within whatever constraints they faced. The shooting exercise that had seemed impossible until Frank completed it became a metaphor for how expertise and determination could overcome apparent limitations when proper techniques and mental discipline were applied to challenging situations. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever witnessed someone overcome significant physical limitations to achieve something that seemed impossible? Someone whose determination and adapted techniques allowed them to excel despite challenges that would have defeated others? Tell us in the comments about the adaptive excellence you've seen in people who refuse to let limitations define their capabilities. And if you believe that true skill transcends physical limitations and that the warrior spirit can overcome any challenge, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Every story reminds us that the most impressive achievements often come from those who have learned to work with their limitations rather than being defeated by them, and that legends are often found in the most unexpected places. We'll see you in the next one.